Good evening. You are watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel. Sitting in for Jing Magsaysay, I'm Karen Jimeno. Tonight we are joined by a photographer who has brought a lot of acclaims not only for himself, but for the country. He was named as one of the 5 best photographers in the world by Scott Kelby. His photographs have been used in many international organizations, including UNICEF. He also hosts many workshops here and across the globe. He is Manny Librodo. Good evening, and thank you for being with us tonight. It's truly an honor.
Good evening, Karen. It's also a pleasure for me to be here.
So one thing I'm very, very curious about, aside from looking at your work, they're all terrific, I did some stalking and found out that you have a degree in psychology, which I think a lot of people don't even suspect. And my curiosity actually is how you got into photography, from psychology to being a professional photographer.
Yeah, I graduated with a degree in psychology in University of the Philippines. And right after that, I took some units in education. And then I went to Bangkok to teach. I was teaching psychology in high school. And as a teacher, you know, we have plenty of holidays. So I look forward to those holidays, you know, weekends to do travel.
Sem break.
Sem
Summer
break, yes. So when I did travel, I basically have with me a camera to document what I see, to shoot pictures of people I've met. And I posted them online, and it started everything. You know, people got to like my work, and before I know it, people had been flying to Bangkok to do workshops with me,
Wow,
and
amazing.
so on and so forth. That's how it started.
And you started with a professional camera right away when you
No.
started posting photos? So that was with what kind of camera?
I started with a point and shoot. You know, I started with a Nikon camera, a point and shoot Nikon camera, and I was taking just ordinary pictures, but because of the social media, you know, like posting it online, people got noticed of the kind of picture I take, and they eventually become more demanding for me to show more pictures. And as what they've said, the rest is history.
Wow, amazing. And of course, you started still as a teacher while doing photography. Right now, how much of your time is in photography and how much of it is still with teaching? Or are you full-time photographer?
I'm doing full-time photography right now, but I must say that I'm still teaching, because most of my photography basically right now is doing workshops. So as a person who is doing workshops, training people how to see the way I see, and developing that inner art in them in photography, is basically teaching. So I must say I'm still into teaching.
That's great. And speaking of teaching, what can you teach about people who are taking photographs now? For instance, during disasters. I off camera kanina before we started, I asked if you were able to take some photographs of Cebu and Bohol, and you said before in Cebu, but mostly people. But what would be your advice in terms of taking photographs when it comes to disasters? What are photographs supposed to convey in times of disasters?
Well, my kind of photography is such that I usually take pictures of people. I usually would tell a story by just shooting a face, looking for someone who represents the mood of the disaster, for example. And I would zero in on the face, on the expression, on the parts of the body that would somehow convey what I want the viewer to see. I think doing photography in terms of covering disasters, I think you have to be very, very sensitive, because you might actually overdo it, and you might actually kind of like touch into some issues that are very sensitive. Technically, as a photographer, I use my heart. I try to see with my heart, not with just my eyes. So eventually it translates to pictures that are supposed to convey a lot of emotions and would, affect people who are looking at it and eventually do something to, in the case of disasters, to help the victims.
Well, I hope we have some photographers out there who are listening to you right now. Because I think for us here in Luzon, that's what we want to see. Like what's going on in Cebu and Bohol. And sometimes the only thing that really is able to communicate with you are the photos that you see of the place. And speaking of emotions, you talked a lot about your subjects and being able to convey their feelings. And I think you do that very well. At least when I looked at your work, I could really see them. And I read your story about one of your subjects, Rosalinda, and that was very touching. And I'm curious whether you have that kind of connection with all of your subjects when you take photos.
You are supposed to have the connection with your subjects. Whether that connection is something that is long-lasting or something that happens only during the shoot, it needs to be there. Okay. Otherwise, the picture will just exist in a vacuum in terms of emotions, in terms of connection, in terms of a lot of other things. Rosalinda is from my home province, Iloilo, and believe it or not, I saw her only during that day when I shot her. But in that short period of time before I shot her, I have to talk to her. And even during the time when I was actually pressing my shutter, I keep on talking to her. I asked her to tell me about her life, how many kids does she have, what kind of work did she do, why is she still peddling cigarettes, on the sidewalk, and so on and so forth, So basically, during the act of shooting, you should keep on communicating with your subject if you want to draw something out from them, so that they will give you more of the emotion that you wanted people to see when they look at the picture.
That's interesting, because when I see your photos, I always think, wow, it's really full of either emotion but I guess that's what's behind the scenes. It's you actually connecting with them on an emotional level. And is this something that you are able to teach your students when they do workshops with you?
A while ago you mentioned that I have a degree in psychology. I think it's a lot of psychology,
so you were able to use that skill.
Right. Yes. In psychology, if you want a certain kind of response, you have to give a certain kind of stimulus, so to speak, In terms of workshops, I try to somehow display that when I direct the model, and so on and so forth, The thing about my workshop is that I'm so hands-on. I shoot along with my students. And I think there's no substitute to teaching than actually making them experience how it is to shoot along with me and to be right there next to me while I'm talking to my subject. The thing with my workshops, though, is that I'm mostly dealing with models who already know how to express their emotions, But then, the timing of when to press the shutter is a big thing, because that's where you are actually telling your story.
I'm curious as well, how do you even choose your subjects? Is this random? You walk into a place and you decide, I want to shoot this person or that. How do you determine?
Oh, that's a very good question, because actually most of the photographers would just come in one scenario, for example, and just shoot anybody. I think that's the number one thing that they have to take into consideration, who to choose. Okay, normally for me, I choose a subject that has the most character. That character could come in form of, the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, the shape of the face, the hairstyle. It's something that would shout out to you. Like, take my picture. I'm different. And then secondly, I also would like to make sure that I have a good light. So basically, before I start choosing my subject, I already have in mind, where am I gonna put him or her? Eventually after, communicating with that person and making that connection, you can actually ask that person to go with you to a place where there's a good light, because I think light is a very important factor in photography. Photography is painting with light. If you have a good subject, but if your light is not good enough, then you won't be able to impact your photo in such a way that it's gonna be more, effective in terms of communicating a story.
So after subjects, we now go to venue.
Uh-huh.
And you were telling me earlier that you were inspired to be a photographer because of your love for traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you've been around everywhere, you've shot Europe and of course a lot of parts of Asia. Now, how do you choose where to go next when you want to just shoot and photograph subjects?
You know what? I think, I've traveled a lot. I have been to so many places, so many beautiful places. But I think every place is a good place to shoot, because believe it or not, let's go back to Rosalinda.
Mm.
Where is she from? My home province. I haven't been looking so much before, So I think you can go back to any place you had been to and make it the best in terms of photography. But if you're going to ask me where I want to go more, I would possibly say Asia. There's so much to see in Asia. And I would also like to say I would love to explore the Philippines more because I have seen so many potentials in the Philippines. And the passion of the people here in the Philippines will not only make us Filipinos as good photographers, but also as good subjects.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like how you also connect a lot with your Filipino heritage, considering you're world-renowned.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me curious, where are you found mostly these days? It seems like you're always traveling. So would you say you're based here in the Philippines or abroad?
I would say I'm based where my next workshop is going to be.
Oh,
Okay?
so you're a nomad. You're always traveling.
Right.
Okay.
I have my place in Bangkok, so I stay there most of the time to relax. But I have plenty of, friends here in the Philippines, and I always have to go back home to somehow, reunited with my roots. And as what they've said, there's no place like home. So Philippines is a very firm route for me that I need to go back to every now and then.
Do Filipinos also recognize you as much as you're known abroad? Because I'm not even sure if people see you when you walk around, if they know, they're aware that you're in the top 5 best photographers in the world. So do you find that you're also as renowned here in the Philippines as you are internationally?
Oh, definitely. I always love to do talks, during conferences, conventions here in the Philippines. And I'm so overwhelmed by the amount of support I'm getting from the Filipinos. If I do workshops abroad, I also am overwhelmed by the amount of participants coming from the Philippines joining my workshop. I have even some Filipinos flying from the Philippines to do workshops abroad.
Wow.
Sometimes, they cheer me, if I am along with world-renowned photographers all over the world in the conventions, conferences. When my name is being mentioned, they cheer me up, and I have to, come up to their, expectations. I have to do well. It's for the Philippines.
Oh, I think that's, as a Filipino, I'm saying thank you. Thank you for, of course, doing that and not losing your Filipino connection. How has photography changed your life? I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. I think in a big way. Photography has changed my life. Believe it or not, I'm not a technical photographer. I would say an artistic photographer. I don't dwell much with technicality. So personally, before I got kind of well known in the field of photography, I'm not so confident about my photography because I don't know how to play around with my camera, However, because of the social media, I think what people look at are the finished products. They're not looking at what's your f-stop, what's your ISO. They don't care about that. They just look at the finished product because it's very instant. You post it up in Facebook, it reaches, 1 million people in a few hours. I think basically what is very, very important is that you basically shoot from your heart, just follow your gut feel, and you could not go wrong with that.
Okay, that's, I think, going to be very comforting for a lot of aspiring photographers out there, because it seems like a very complicated process, no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, now we have to go on a break. I still have a lot of questions for you. We still have a lot to discuss with our guests when we return. And yes, stay tuned, because I'm going to ask Manny to show us Rosalinda. News Cafe will be back after these messages. You are still watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel, and we are still joined by our guest, Mr. Manny Librodo. Thanks again for
Thank you so much
staying
again.
with us. Manny, I'm curious, how do you feel? How does it feel to be well known internationally?
It's so flattering, overwhelming. It's such an honor to be known internationally. You know what? I have an anecdote. I was in Bangkok. Right after I landed, I went to the bathroom, and then someone followed me and asked me,
Fan.
Manny Librodo? And I said, yes. Manny Librodo? It's situations like that wherein I really, thank God for giving me this gift of photography.
And it seems like at least you haven't even let it go into your head. You're so down to earth. Like I didn't know what to expect before I met you, because I was really, really very excited. And do you think there has been a difference between how photographers are treated internationally now compared to when you first started?
Yeah, I think right now things travel so fast because of the social media. You take the picture right now, you can upload it in a few seconds after. So basically, the amount of response you get as a photographer and the speed of the response to you is so fast that somehow, with that feedback thing going on, you want to do more and more and more, because you want to show more and affect more people in the process.
Now that you've mentioned social media, that was my next question. How do you think social media is being used with the advent of digital photography?
I think the social media makes all of us a photographer, because social media is accessible to almost everyone. So basically, I think everyone is a photographer right now, even just when they use their mobile phone, and upload pictures. I think social media is very powerful in terms of developing the love for photography and the media of photography as a way to, effect change and bring news faster and so on and so forth.
Do you still use the basically old mediums like films, darkroom? You still do?
I never used
Never.
film and darkrooms.
So
I went
yes,
straight
because
to
you do.
digital photography. Yeah.
Because that's your generation. See, you can be proud to say, I'm that young. I started with
I
digital.
I would love to say that.
And when it comes to digital, how much of your work, or at least the shots you take, are actually used post-process?
Okay, I think almost all of the shots I have are post-processed, in the sense that I retouch them. However, I am very careful about my retouching. If I'm doing a photojournalism kind of picture, I don't add elements into it, I always believe that post-processing should be an enhancement of what you have taken. You can somehow enhance the light, the colors, but I think nothing substitute to a good picture to start off with. No amount of post-processing can improve a bad picture, so to speak. That's basically how I look at post-processing. It's just an enhancement.
Enhancement, not alteration.
Not alterations.
Okay. Now, Manny, we asked you to choose 3 photos from your work, and we're going to show this to our viewers, and maybe you can tell us why you chose these 3 photos in particular. Okay, let's start with this one first.
Oh, okay, this is the picture of Rosalinda.
This is Rosalinda,
This
the
is
girl, the
Rosalinda.
woman we were talking about earlier from your
Right.
hometown of Iloilo.
Right. And I chose this picture because I think this is the picture that made me famous internationally. I call these stories of her life because each of the wrinkle in her face tells a story. And I also believe that this picture has won almost all the international competitions I've joined. And this carved my name as a photographer to watch for.
That's great. And I am amazed by how much detail you see in the photos, like every lines. I don't know how much light you use, but it's really amazing. And for you to have even connected with her, no? Just the first time that you saw her.
Yeah, and I just shot her on the sidewalk. You know, I don't have to bring her anywhere else, you know, because I think that's her environment, you know, so I might as well shoot her there.
Oh, so this photo was on a sidewalk, not in a studio,
No.
basically in her own element.
Yes, one thing about my photography is that I never use studio lighting. I only use natural light.
Wow, that's very, very amazing. Okay, let's go to the next photo.
Well, this is Crystal. I chose this photo also as something that I would jumpstart in terms of the conversation about my photography, because this is where I transitioned from a travel photographer to a sort of a fashion photographer. Crystal was a student in our school. I was teaching in an international school in Bangkok, and Crystal somehow allowed me to experiment more in terms of fashion photography, because she allowed me to shoot her almost every day, you know, of her, you know, junior and senior year in high school.
And she's not Filipino.
She's not.
Thai.
She's Thai British.
Oh,
and
wow.
she is now a Hollywood actress.
Oh, okay. So she really loved to be photographed as well.
Yes, that's right.
I think you brought it out in her, the modeling. It's I can see from this photo. That's,
Yeah. But if you can see also, what makes this picture good is the light, you know. And again, I'm not using studio lighting. These are all natural.
Was she moving during this time? I think you can see some movement, some life.
Because of the way I use the light, it looks like she's moving, but she was actually stationary.
Amazing. Very good photo again. Okay, let's see the last one.
Okay, this picture is very, very important for me, you know. This picture is of a beautiful lady who is not only a model for me, but also a muse for me.
Okay, so this is the muse.
Right, that's Caronisha Jasmine. And believe it or not, she's not just modeling for me, but she prepared everything, you know. She does the makeup, she does the styling, and you know, when you shoot her, you don't have to instruct her. She knows exactly how to project. And when I say styling and makeup, she prepared all of those that you see in there.
Even the, what are those, bees on her face?
Yes, these are bees, yeah. She has to preserve all of those bees and paint them, put a double-sided tape, and so on and so forth. I can just imagine the amount of passion she has put into the shoot. And as a photographer, it would be a disservice to her if I don't become as passionate as her.
That's incredible, because the bees look just as real and alive as, of course, the woman where they have landed on. And I guess this is one of those examples where you've said you don't do alterations, just enhancement. Right. I guess in this case, enhancing the colors. But this is how it looked like when you shot the photo.
Yes, exactly.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing your photos with us.
It's my pleasure.
And now that you've shown us some of your original works, I want to ask you what you think about those people who use other people's works. And I think you've had your share of plagiarism. I mean, of you being plagiarized. What do you do about this? Or what is your stand on plagiarism?
Definitely, it shouldn't be done. It's a big, you know, negative mark for us Filipino photographers to have one among us doing plagiarism. I have had my share of plagiarism, so many, but the most recent ones is something that happened a few weeks ago, and I was a bit irked by what he did, and all I was asking from him was actually to issue a public apology, which up to now I'm still waiting for.
He has not given a public
No,
apology.
not at all. Not at all.
Oh, that's...
And people are telling me to, file a case. Maybe you're an attorney. Maybe
Yes,
you can
I
help
am.
me.
That's very disappointing.
Yeah, it is very disappointing, because the thing is, everyone in the photography world here in the Philippines knows it's my picture.
Yes.
It's kind of like, so glaring that it's my picture. It's of Karu, and of my other models. And I'm not even asking
for any
for
monetary
anything, just
compensation.
an apology.
Yes.
So maybe off-cam later I can ask for advice.
I would
on
be
you.
happy to advise you. Do you have a photo of this? Yes. So this is the original and the fake. And as you can see, this is, I guess, one of the disadvantages of technology. People now can remove watermarks, and they use that to steal. Basically, it's stealing when you use other people's photos.
Right.
And now that you mentioned Filipinos among us who plagiarize, I just suddenly remembering this other huge controversy with that Filipino photographer from UP who won in an international contest, only for us to find out that his work was plagiarized.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to all those aspiring photographers out there? Because it is the unsuccessful ones who, I guess, are more inclined or tempted to steal other people's work. What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, my advice to them would be to practice a lot. The people that they are plagiarizing are actually people who have done years and years of practice to perfect their craft. And they have to be confident about what they're doing. I think our industry, the photography industry in the Philippines, has no room for plagiarists. I think we have more than enough share of mudslingings, in the international world, in the international scene, that we don't need anything coming from photography.
Thank you. That's very good advice. What about for photographers, Filipino photographers in particular, who want to be like you, who want to be well-known internationally and want to be someday recognized as also one of the best photographers in the world? What would be your advice to them?
Well, it's kind of ironical because my advice to them is not to be like me, not to be another Manny Librodo. I want them to be themselves.
To find themselves.
Right. To be their own photographer, to be their own person, because there's only one Manny Librodo. So I think my advice for them is to know what their genre is, to develop their own kind of style, get inspired by photographers that they like. If I'm one of the inspiration, that's so wonderful. But I want them to be known as who they are as a photographer, because there are no rooms for clones, so to speak.
Terrific advice. And I'm sure a lot of people, even those watching us today, if you're interested in photography, they would want to join your workshop as well. And thank you for sparing us the time, and you've inspired me and I'm sure several other viewers out there. I know now why there's so much passion in your photography, because you have a lot of passion. I can sense it just from interviewing you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have left. I would like to thank our guest, Manny Librodo, for being with us tonight. Join us again next Thursday for another round of discussion here on News Cafe. Sitting in for Jing Magsaysay, I'm Karen Jimeno. Good night.